I'd like to welcome everyone to today's edition of the Software Spotlight. And today we're actually joined live by Terry Feinberg. He's a seasoned marketing strategist and founder of Terry Feinberg Consulting. With decades of experience helping businesses develop effective marketing strategies, Terry specializes in creating authentic connections between brands and their audiences. He's here to share some insights on building meaningful marketing relationships and driving business growth. So, with that, Terry, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Michael.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you aboard, and I know we've had some conversations in the past of getting together for an episode, and I'm glad we're finally here. And I was hoping you could, help our audience understand a little bit of your career path to getting to where you are now, and a little bit about what goes on there at Terry Feinberg Consulting.
Sure. Well, my career, I guess, has all been about marketing or communications of somehow. Started, my grandfather had a petrochemical company. He got sick, and my baptism by fire was going down, helping to run the company, and particularly from a sales and marketing standpoint. Started my first advertising and design agency after that, and that was before the days of desktop publishing.
Oh wow!
Apple
Okay.
was actually a client, and when they came out with the first Mac, that kind of put a big dent into our business.
Sure.
But but started with that. In the middle, I did some nonprofit association management, but that in whether it was promoting events or advocacy or fundraising or training programs, it really was probably 90% communications. From there, I ran a local media company, part of Gannett, and then was a partner in forming, one of the what became one of the premier marketing agencies in the country focused on agriculture and fresh foods. And 40 plus years of 60 plus hours a week, decided to eliminate the employee and the brick and mortar headaches. And in 2017, went out on my own just to focus on what I enjoy most and do best, which is helping people grow their businesses and tell their stories.
That's fun, and I think that's an important part of the skill set that it sounds like you bring to the table. Obviously, having had all of those experiences in traditional corporate America and a lot of traditional environments, and even in the early days, as you mentioned, with the petrochemical business, having had those experiences gives you a unique frame of reference, which is not so common nowadays. So I think
Yeah, I
that
mean, I think we all build on our experience, and there's some stuff you just can't short circuit. you gotta, you gotta, you gotta have the scars, and learn through experience over time.
so a lot of the clients that you're working with, are they focused, are they mainly small to mid-sized businesses, enterprise level clients, specific industries? Can you give an example of some of the different
No,
types
it,
of
it
clients?
does vary, but for the most part, I'm working with small to mid-sized businesses where they have minimal, if any, in-house marketing capacity. Working directly with the CEO or the management team. Sometimes functioning as a fractional CMO, but oftentimes, while I people generally come to me for help with marketing just because of my experience. I end up helping with any number of areas. But this year in particular, it seems to be a lot of fundraising,
Got it.
help with the decks and the strategies and how to go about it, because a lot of business beyond marketing really is strategy and communication driven, and that's where my background and strengths are.
And it sounds like from what you just described there, obviously the strategy and all of that is an important part of it, but it sounds like you're, for certain clients, also helping with some of the implementation or guiding them on the implementation or
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it's just the strategy is the first step to successful outcomes. It's what the Alice in Wonderland with the Cheshire Cat. If you don't know where you're going to go, where you want to go, how you get there doesn't really matter. So, I mean, it's really laying the groundwork of understanding what's important to you and your customers, or the funders, or manufacturers, whatever it is, what's important to all sides. What do you want them to do, or in marketing, do, think, or feel? And then what's the best way to get them to do that?
got it, got it. So obviously you've had a interesting career. Has your marketing strategy evolved, like overall? Do you see strategy evolving over the course of your career? Have a lot of the fundamentals changed, or a lot of the fundamentals still the same today that they were years ago?
Yeah, I think from a strategy standpoint, the fundamentals, are pretty much the same. From a tactical standpoint and an implementation standpoint, radically different.
Okay.
But yeah, if you're, starting with the basics of, you know, understanding your company and your products or services and your customers, what you want them to do, what's important to you, what's important to them, how can you motivate them to do what you want them to do. Um, um, and particularly working with a lot of, or primarily with small, medium-sized businesses, it's not a right or a wrong. Given all of the hours and sweat and tears we put into building a business, there's a lot of options, and deciding what you want that business to be for you and your family. And I think that really needs to go into it and be an important part of the mix. Every opportunity to make a buck isn't worth pursuing. It's what really drives your interest, drives your passion, and how can you best get there. So I think there's a lot of overlap between, especially in smaller businesses, between business strategy and personal passions, desires, and strategies as well.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. Obviously, entrepreneurs and small business owners have quite an investment in the business itself, and you often see larger organizations acquiring smaller companies for the innovation and for a lot of the things that can happen in smaller businesses that are just not happening in larger enterprise level
And then the larger
clients.
enterprises kills the innovation in the process. Yeah,
Well,
yes.
sometimes, but so to that point, what, like, you've seen the good, the bad, the ugly. What are some of the common marketing mistakes you see businesses making?
Um, I think the biggest one is actually trying to go to market without having a strategy behind it, and not just a big go to market, but a media salesperson calls with a good deal. Okay, we'll jump on it.
Sure.
Well, why? Whether it's a good deal or not, is it going to help you achieve your purposes? Or they'll decide on a way to deliver a message, and I said that vague,
Sure.
intentionally. It could be a billboard, it could be digital advertising, but without really understanding the way the media works, the way people consume that media, and who is consuming that media, and are they the right people? And for those people in that arena, what's the best way to catch their attention, and again, to not just catch their attention, but to motivate them and inspire them to do what you want them to do.
So when you're working with a new client, how do you go about helping them find their authentic brand voice? What it is that they're all about.
Yeah, it really can vary on. I mean, it does vary a lot on the company, what stage they're at, what they're looking for. But I've always been a strong proponent of less is more. And it's the thought process that's more important, not the 200-page bound document that nobody's ever going to read
Right.
after it's done. And, I mean, sometimes that can be accomplished just in a couple hours of conversation. Oftentimes, I mean, a tool that I've found, really effective is one-on-one interviews. And, you know, usually it's, a key audience is existing clients, customers, prospective customers, if you can get them, former customers, if you can get them, and sometimes key people in the company, key employees. And it's not statistically significant, but it's amazing what you can glean from half a dozen to a dozen and a half interviews, and really some significant insights of their views and their perspective on the company, on the products, on the market. And that can lead to a pretty basic marketing plan or business plan that lays out just the key elements, and again the thought process of what's gonna guide us, what's whether it's the audience, the messages, or the tone, or a combination of all of those. How do we want to present ourselves, and how can we best present ourselves to get the actions we want to help grow the business? And sometimes those actions are sales, but they're not always sales. So
Yeah.
it really varies on the business and the situation.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it sounds like you have a pretty well defined process of what you've seen work and not work over the years as to how you get to the point where you can roll out a marketing strategy that really connects.
Yeah, I mean, probably the longest marketing plan I've done has maybe been 8 pages. So again, the idea is bullets and highlights, and just focus on what we want to accomplish, and how best to do it, and then you implement from there. And it also functions as a good filter. I mean, it sets the strategy. You can also use it to set the budget and plan and tactics and what you're going to do. But you can also use it as a filter as new ideas and opportunities pop up. And it doesn't mean you won't do them. It just gives you a tool to evaluate them and decide, does this fit in with what we're accomplishing? Does it make sense to devote resources, time and dollars to this area, or is this outside of what we said we wanted to do? Or it's outside of what we said we wanted to do. We've looked at it that way, but we're going to do it anyway, and here's why. But at least we thought about it, and it makes sense to do it.
Makes a lot of sense. And for a lot, if you were speaking to some of the executives at small businesses that are listening to this podcast, can you give an example of, a client or a type of client that you've worked with over the years, and what life looked like before they came to you, and where you got them to after working with your consulting practice?
We can talk about a few, but let me start with this, and I'll keep names out of it to
Sure.
protect the innocent, or the guilty.
That's okay.
But I have done a lot of work in agriculture and ag tech. And in 2012, the Food Safety Modernization Act was updated to create rules for sanitation of truck trailers that transport perishable food items, so produce and meats, etc. And this company started and came out of the transportation side and the food safety side and designed a better system for sanitizing and cleaning trailers. The previous technology, if you want to call it that, was basically a guy in rubber boots and a pressure washer, which left water pooling in there. Microbes can grow in there. And there's really no sanitation piece to it. It's just a cleaning. So they
Sure.
created this automated system that goes into a truck and propels itself out and washes it and dries it and sanitizes it with UV lights. And they designed it to do a better job of sanitization, but also to meet the new legal requirements. And they came out, actually they were on version 3 of their machine, which does a fantastic job, but they've been having some difficulties trying to penetrate into the market. And what found in working with them and talking to them and talking to their customers was, one, while the law was on the book, the government wasn't enforcing it. There had been no documented cases of outbreaks or food safety reasons because of truck trailer contamination. And the customers who were shipping products weren't requiring it. So they've got this better mousetrap, but no one's interested in it. Because what they were doing, what was getting by, and particularly the truck drivers who actually are usually making the decision of where and when to get their trucks washed, they're just trying to check the boxes, get it done for the lowest possible price. So all of their messaging previously had been around sanitation and the Food Safety Act and how important it was, but nobody cared. What they cared about was convenient, quick, thorough service at a good price. And they actually had all of that. It was price competitive. It was quicker than the other systems. It was better. And in particular, for the couple markets, then they were really convenient locations. So while we are still mentioning their technology and the sanitation and how good it is, instead of leading with that, we're now leading with the convenience and the price and the speed. And we've also moved from generic, all their marketing has been digital, but from generic marketing to mobile device only, geo-targeted, particularly around truck stops, because the people making the decisions at the moment are truck drivers. And they're using
Sure.
their phone to find a place near them because they got to get their trailer washed.
I love it.
So,
That's really smart. It's a perfect use of geofencing and geotargeting and all of that.
right. So the strategy changed the messaging from the technology really to what their customers were looking for, which was convenience and speed and price. And the tactical change to really better target the people where and when they were looking for it.
I love it. I love it. And did that all come out of research and speaking with customers, just
That
like
very process I was talking
the
about,
process you were talking
interview
about?
with the company people and interview with, in this case, it was only half a dozen of their customers.
Sure. No, so you got right to the core of that. And I think that's one of the interesting things about consulting is, a lot of times small business owners feel like they are starting a business, they need to do everything, or even a few years into it, they feel like they need to be able to wear every hat. And a big part of it, of growing a business and scaling, is realizing that even just a few hours of consulting or outsourcing an entire area of a business to someone that understands that area inside and out and has been there and done that is so well worth the money. And
Yeah,
it's actually less expensive than struggling, you know?
yeah, no, absolutely. But I think also, sometimes it helps, to have an outside perspective and to have a sounding board. I mean, the trailer washout company we were just talking about, I mean, they've been in the market for 8 years, and I mean, not a significant change, but it is a really significant change. Or, I'm also working with a company that is trying to bring a bicycling safety product to market. Um, and with him, I mean, it's really evolved, helping with sales, helping with distribution, helping with fundraising. Um, Shoot me an email or call me up. What do you think about this? Or I just had this conversation with this person, and sometimes it just helps to have somebody that you've worked with for a while that you trust that that is invested but isn't invested, is willing to say, that's a crazy idea. Um, or have you thought about, or, well, gee, it's great that you've got this great trailer sanitation product, but that's not what people are interested in. Let's not get rid of that, but let's talk about what they're interested in.
And it sounds like what you're doing is a heck of a lot more fun than what you were doing, and it sounds like a lot of varied experiences, which is neat in a lot of different clients.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it is. I mean, that's what keeps me going. That's what I enjoy. I mean, some people say every day is different, but for me, literally every hour is different. And well, I may be jumping from the cycling safety product to I'm working with another company that has SaaS applications for perishable supply chain. And for some people, that would drive them crazy having to have so much different information and switch on the spot like that. But for me, I mean, I really thrive on that type of environment, and that's why I keep doing it.
so let me ask you, and obviously there's two sides to every relationship, but as far as bringing aboard new clients, how do you know if a client is going to be a good fit on both ends, for you and for them? Are there telltale signs that you look for or expectations that you try to make sure you're managing as you're bringing aboard new clients?
Yeah, good question. I think in reality, it evolves over time. I mean, you can find out on initial conversations whether there's a good match personality wise and skill set wise, and what they're trying to accomplish and how they're approaching it. Um, um, I I'm very flexible in how I work with clients, so I don't have a onboarding fee. I don't have monthly retainers.
Sure.
Usually, it starts as a small project and evolves from there. And if if they're getting value out of it, and the needs there, keep doing more things. So, I mean, most of what I do ends up being more serial project or hourly
As the need
as the
arises.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense. Makes sense. And I guess as you're working with you know different industries and things like that, have you seen, I guess, big shifts, or maybe just in strategy in general, big shifts in marketing strategy over the recent years? Have you seen some major paradigm shifts in the industry?
I'm not sure if there've been paradigm shifts in um, so much in strategy or marketing, but there have been a lot of shifts in the marketplace. And companies and marketers need to figure out how to respond to that. So ad tech, for example, at least for the last couple of years, what is getting the most attention and from customers and the investment community is hardware.
Okay.
Drones and infield automation, automatic tractors that plant and weed without a driver and they're GPS controlled, and drones that are measuring plant health and irrigation and all of that. So companies that are selling software or applications in ag tech are having a hard time getting attention because the investors are trying to sell hardware and the customers are mostly interested in hardware because it's a lot sexier. I mean, here's a drone that can show you where in your field your plants are doing good and where they're not is a whole lot more interesting than, here's an application that can save you 7% on your logistics.
Right.
Even if you're spending $50 million a year on logistics, and 7% savings would be pretty good. The drone's a lot sexier.
Yeah, and it's been a digital transformation. I mean, that's what
Exactly.
has really changed marketing strategy at a high level. So I
So
think,
I mean, we've got much better tools, much better tracking. Digital marketing in particular is so much better at targeting, and targeting and responsiveness. You can basically instantly change an ad, ramp it up, scale it back, turn it off, turn it on. And, in the days where trade journals and magazines, some of the publication leads were 3 months.
yeah, exactly. So
It's, there was no ability to respond to circumstances. And, throughout the digital platforms, we can respond instantly and get incredible metrics and results.
so even with all of these changes, are there some marketing principles or fundamentals that you think still hold true today, even with all of these changes that are important for
No,
businesses to understand?
absolutely. It still boils down to human buyers, regardless of whatever information they have and what sources of information and how they're evaluating things. Human buyers making decisions. And whether that is a large enterprise that has a team of buyers, or it's a consumer or a small business where the individual is making the decision, somebody is still making a decision based on their needs, their wants, their desires, and how the product or the company can fulfill that. And that hasn't changed. Something else that hasn't changed is that one of the most difficult competitors that companies face is no competition. There's a reason fast food stores locate on four corners that are all by each other. And people looking for fast food have the choice. They can go where they want Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and it's all convenient and it's all there, and people know they need to eat, and they may want fast food. But if you're creating a new category that people have been existing for all these years without, then it becomes more difficult, because first you have to create awareness of the need before you can provide your solution to that need.
Makes a lot of sense. And for marketers that are, in this landscape now, are there different trends that they should be prepared for, that you see on the horizon?
Um, again, I think for the most part, trends that are having an impact are more on the tactical side. We're getting more and more data, more and more information, more and more ways to evaluate the effectiveness of where we're spending our money and where we're implementing it. Um, I at times though that is conflicting with some, in particular, societal privacy trends. Um, so, for example, there's looking at digital newsletters, which can be very effective in B2B arenas. There are some in their TOS, terms of service, that allow them to share information with their affiliates. I think is the standard legal term they use, and
Sure.
some that don't. So that ag tech SaaS company has been running ads in a couple retail-oriented digital newsletters, one of which is providing names, titles, email addresses, and phone numbers of everybody who clicks on their ad. I mean, that's incredibly valuable information to give to the sales team to follow up. I mean, even if you don't say, "Hey, I see you saw our ad," when you
Right.
call them up, you've got a warm lead there because they're already familiar with you.
Sure. Sure. And I
Yeah,
think
the
that
other
it goes.
company sends you metrics of how many people clicked and what your click-through rate was. So, I think we'll see companies evolving to providing advertisers with more and more information, but at the same time, I'm not sure when somebody's going to see this, but right now we're like 3 or 4 days before the election, and if anybody's like me, you're getting 50 text messages a day from politicians.
Yeah, and it's
Um,
everybody will be happy when it's over.
right, but text messaging commercially is a growing area, but so are concerns about privacy and how the hell did you get my number?
Exactly. Exactly.
So,
And I
I
think
think, well, yeah, technology isn't always going to win out, as sometimes technology results in backlash, such as quit sending me text messages about voting for whomever.
yeah, and I think a big part of it is, it's not a question of is the technology there, it is. I think the bigger question is, privacy and responsible marketing and really permission based marketing. I think that's a
Right.
big part of it. And I think it's interesting. I think in the US obviously we have many privacy laws on the books, and I think if you think back even just a few years, uh, before some of the legislation that was passed. I mean, how many times a day did you receive telemarketing calls? How many times a day do you receive telemarketing calls now? Not so much. So it's changed, but it's also a matter of organizations being respectful of a lot of the policies that exist.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the people who are involved with Oasis are selling B2B, and it's even more important in that area. They're you're trying to sell them something, but they're trying to sell something to somebody else. And
Right.
when you're imposing on their time, and particularly if what you have is not relevant to what they're trying to do, it has counter consequences from what you're trying to
To
achieve.
achieve, absolutely. So, just in closing, I mean, I guess for a lot of the executives that are listening to this episode, is there a piece or two of marketing advice that you would give to every executive that they really need to be mindful of as they're you know choosing someone for this type of consulting?
Yeah, at first I thought you were going to ask advice in general as opposed to choosing the consultant. But
And both, I think both are important. They're one, both related.
okay, so on the first one, then on the advice in general, man, the first thing that comes to mind is get out of your head and get into the head of your customers.
Yeah,
How are they going to perceive your company? How are they going to, what are their needs? How can you help them? How can you let them know that? What's really going to inspire them and motivate them to do whatever it is you want them to do? And that, whether it's a consumer company, a nonprofit, or a B2B company, yeah, that's still the same. I mean, your role is to get something to do something that helps you by helping them. So if instead of thinking about you, you think about them, you'll help yourself in the process.
makes a
Um,
lot of sense.
I mean, in terms of working with a consultant, um, I think how they present themselves, checking references, all of that is important, but you need to find somebody you're comfortable working with. I mean, a lot of times I consider myself a non-equity partner, and so I mean, who is on the same page with you, but not just saying what you want to hear, but will give you honest, unvarnished advice. Who has the experience you're looking for? Who I mean, I personally wouldn't go into an engagement with a big upfront commitment before I had an opportunity to work with somebody and really test it out and see if it's going to work. You see some of these arrangements where you're locked in for a year, or there's thousands of dollars up front, and you may or may not get something down the road, and it may not work. I think um,
So measurable results is basically an important part, and it is a journey, as you said.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's like any relationship, finding the right fit.
Yeah,
Sounds like
and
an
I think
important
going
part.
with that is having realistic expectations.
Mhm.
What are you trying to accomplish, and how quickly? If you've got, you've been in business for 5 years, you've built it to $1 million in sales. You don't have a sales team, and you want $10 million in sales next year. Um, that might not be totally realistic.
Yeah, so having the right foundation in place, and I think that's one thing that is very interesting for entrepreneurs to get their focus on the fact that time is one of the most important elements in success, and
Well, and I mean, I think really relating to that comes a little bit back to fundraising and stuff, because I've been working on a few of those projects. And going back to the strategy and the messaging, a for an entrepreneur building a business, having a healthy income and return percentage consistently for a long period of time may be an ideal goal and strategy. For an investor, they may want a 3 year exit strategy.
sure.
So, understanding what your customer, your investor, your audience is looking for is really important. Because if
Yeah, and
you're
aligning
trying
the
to
goals.
build, $250,000 income for the next 10 years, and the investor is trying to get a 10x return in 3 years, those might not be in sync.
Yeah, so getting everything lined up. Well, that is really helpful. And what we're going to do is we'll leave a link in the show notes for anybody that would like to reach out. And I really appreciate taking the time out to share some insights on the software spotlight today. We've had Terry Feinberg with Terry Feinberg Consulting joining us, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for the opportunity.